Everyone talks about being productive, but no one really seems to agree on what that means. That's a question that has been stuck in my head for years. So I decided to explore it, and I thought it would make sense to start this off with a little discussion about task lists, since they are the backbone of most people's approach to productivity. But despite using a task list for years, I've often found them to be a flawed tool. I mean, have you ever looked at your task list and instead of feeling confident and in control, you just felt dread at the size of the task list, like there was never any chance you were going to get it all done, or just paralysis at the challenge of figuring out where to start? I know that is what happened to me when I first started as a project manager years ago. When I started, my productivity system was mostly based around time blocking. But when I started as a project manager, I was instantly overwhelmed with dozens of tasks, and time blocking was too rigid. I started keeping a task list in the lowest friction system I could think of, a text file. It was so easy to add new tasks, but as that list grew, it became overwhelming. Despite trying a dozen different task management apps after that, I found that just about all of them fell down in the same way. Once you hit a certain number of tasks, figuring out what to do next became a paralysis-inducing challenge, sorting through dozens, if not hundreds of tasks, trying to make sure I wasn't missing something important. The task apps were great at storing tasks, but poor at retrieval. Constantly having to sort through so many tasks to decide what to work on next just drained me before I even got any real work done. And my task list became a place where tasks went to die and only be found after they had already been completed or when they were no longer relevant. I lost trust in that system. If I couldn't rely on it to surface the right tasks at the right time, then what was the point? So I did what most people do. I went back to trusting my gut, which worked until it didn't. Early on in my productivity journey, I read Getting Things Done by David Allen, and two things stood out to me. First, you need to log everything in your task management system, or else you will not trust your system. And second, your system needs a way to serve up tasks to you when they're relevant. The tickler files were a form of this. So I started playing around with tracking my tasks on a spreadsheet instead, and I calculated a value for each task based on how much value the task produced and when the task was due, if at all. Then I sorted the tasks, and instead of having to look at hundreds of tasks, I could focus on the top tasks, ones that really moved the needle in terms of value or had a legitimate due date that could not be missed. That spreadsheet was the start of what would eventually evolve into an app that I'm working on, but that's a story for a different video. There certainly were flaws with that spreadsheet. However, it really cut down on the decision fatigue I was suffering and made it so much easier to get into a flow. Even if the formula was off from time to time, it was still better than where I had come from. I added a link to that original spreadsheet in the video notes if anyone is interested in checking it out. Let me know in the comments. How do you handle task triage? And if you don't think your task list is that big, then what tasks are you secretly juggling in your head right now?